on a very special day for us on the committee, I think for our soldiers and for our veterans and for those families of a veteran who sacrificed their life on behalf of our country. Memorial Day is coming up next week, and today we're going to, in the Senate, begin the process of passing, ultimately, the VA Mission Act, which, as I said on the floor a few minutes ago in my speech, is the last piece of a great mosaic to reform the veterans' benefits for our veterans, make them contemporary with the 21st century, and see to it that the best care, the best attention, and the best legislation is in place for our veterans. It's been a pleasure for me to be chairman of this committee, but this has been a team effort with my partner, Jon Tester, who's going to turn my phone off for me. I'm sorry, I meant to turn. Got it, okay.
It's the president, but that's okay.
He's indispensable, let me tell you. But that's kind of the way we operate. We pick up for each other and everything else to try and get the ultimate job done. And we've done that on this committee with the Democrats and Republicans alike. We've taken the best ideas of both sides, the caregivers, which I know Patty Murray worked on for so long, and other members on the Democratic side. One I've been committed to as a Vietnam-era veteran, one that I think is very important for one of the most important parts of this legislation. Doing away with the 40-mile rule and the 30-day rule and getting access to our veterans to care more timely, quality of care more important, and see to it we function better. And in the end, we cost less. We're not privatized. We're mobilized. That's what we're doing. And we're making sure that we have the very best available to our veterans as soon as they can get it. I've never enjoyed a process in government anymore. It's my 41st year in elected office. As I look back on everything I've been a part of, I know of nothing I've enjoyed more than doing this. There were a few days last month or in the last 2 months where I didn't think we were going to make it. But I'm the eternal optimist, and thanks to a lot of hard work by all our staff. And I want to thank John and his staff and what they did, my staff, Bob Hinkey and Adam Reed on the committee in particular, and all the members of the committee for what they've done. And I want to thank the VSOs. We stand on your shoulders as a member of this committee. You are not ornaments or fixtures in this committee. You are the heart of this committee because you're the ones who have offered, sacrificed, and fought, and today work for veterans' benefits as one who loves the service and loves the country. So without further ado, on this day where we will have a cloture vote at noon on the VA Mission Act, and later in the week a motion to pass the VA Mission Act, and later next week hopefully a chance to sign the VA Mission Act to see to it that our 21st century men and women in the military have 21st century benefits by the country they volunteer to fight for. Now I'd like to introduce Ranking Member Jon Tester for his remarks. John?
Thanks, Johnny. Thank you, Johnny, and I want to thank all of you for being here today. But most especially, Johnny, without your leadership, we wouldn't be here today with this bill. I want to thank you for your leadership on this committee and your dedication to veterans throughout this country. I also want to thank the veteran service organizations because they provided critical feedback on this bill as it went through. 38 organizations represent millions of Americans who are all veterans, and some of them, in fact, are with us today. Special thank you to the DAV, the American Legion, the VFW, and each of the organizations for your input. These folks are up here with us today. Veterans have been asking for the choice, reform, and responsible investments in the VA. This bill gets it done, both of them. I want to thank the House Veterans Affairs Committee for the work that they've done to pass a bill that we can take up here in the Senate and ultimately, I hope, get passed. At the beginning of this Congress, we set out to work together on a bill that reforms community care and strengthens the VA. As Johnny said, it's the last piece of a big puzzle. Coming from a rural state like Montana, you can't always have a VA clinic in your hometown, but veterans shouldn't have to drive a couple hours, 2 hours to the nearest clinic, or wait months for an appointment. That's why we need private health care to fill in the gaps when the VA cannot provide those services. But I also know how much the VA needs the services they get from the VA. They're surrounded by their peers, many of them who have experienced the same kind of mental and physical stresses in combat, VA doctors who know how to treat PTSD and toxic exposure and other wounds unique to their service. They connect with the veterans. So the best defense against any effort to privatize the VA or send veterans in a wholesale fashion to the private sector is to make sure the VA is leading up to its promise. The VA Mission Act does that. It recognizes the balance that's needed between VA care and community care and invests in the medical and clinical staff to serve the VA. It takes the bill that Senator Isakson and I helped write, along with the VSOs in this room, Caring for Our Veterans Act, and it adds a few things to that bill. But the foundation of this legislation is something that Johnny and I have written over the course of the last year with input from the veterans group. So I'm incredibly proud to be here to push this bill to the President's desk. The VA Mission Act is a bold, bipartisan compromise that puts healthcare decisions in the hands of the veteran. It breaks down barriers to healthcare wherever it makes sense for the veteran to go. That's where they can go for their care. This nation owes our veterans more than a thank you. They deserve a healthcare system that works for them, regardless of where they live, what the medical condition is that they're struggling with, and whatever their means. Our bill gets rid of a one-size-fits-all system to create a more efficient, easier to navigate system for veterans. It's important in large rural states like Montana, and I would urge the Senate to pass this VA Mission Act to send a message by Memorial Day that's saying thank you isn't enough to those who have put their lives on the line for this nation. We're going to deliver them health care that's worthy of their service. With that, I turn it over to Dean Heller. Senator.
You bet. Good morning, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here, and I want to thank leadership on both sides of the aisle for this particular piece of legislation. But let me get to the point why I'm here and why you're listening to me right now. I had a phone call last week from a veteran in the rural portion of the state of Nevada. He had a clinic. 1 mile from his home. 1 mile from his home, but he still had to drive 100 miles to get the services that he needed for his health care. Clinic was 1 mile from his home. And this is what this VA Mission Act means to fix, is to try to fix those issues so that this veteran who has a clinic 1 mile from his home doesn't have to drive 100 miles in order to get his health care. And that was the case in this circumstance, and that's why I'm so supportive of this legislation. We have 300,000 veterans in the state of Nevada, and we have millions of them statewide. We have two leaders right here that show you how to get legislation done. I'm grateful for both of them. Grateful to be part of this. I want to thank our VSOs, and I think the chairman said it just right. We need them, and we couldn't get to where we are today without the VSOs and the services that they've provided across this country and in my particular state. So I look forward to continuing this process. I look forward to the president signing this bill. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Gary Augustine, Executive Director of the Disabled American Veterans. Thank you, Chairman Isakson, Senator Tester, for your bipartisan leadership in bringing the VA Mission Act to the Senate floor today. Your tenacious efforts in support of all American veterans, including their family caregivers, has made and is continuing to make real progress in fulfilling our promises to the men and women who served. I also want to thank Senator Heller for joining us today and want to especially recognize Senators Patty Murray and Susan Collins for championing caregivers in the Senate. In addition, we are grateful to House Chairman Phil Rowe for his leadership, as well as Representative Mark Takano and all those who voted to pass this in the House this week. For DAV and our 1 million plus members and auxiliary, caregiver expansion has been one of our highest priorities since the program was created back in 2009. Unfortunately, due to the budgetary constraints at the time, Congress limited full caregiver benefits to veterans who were injured on or after September 11, 2001. Leaving thousands of deserving pre-9/11 veterans and caregivers without the support they needed. This is not only an unfair policy, it is also a fiscally unsound one. According to DAV's survey conducted last year, 75% of veterans who rely on caregivers today would need to be institutionalized at much greater expense to VA if they no longer had family supporting them. Consider that VA estimates the cost of long-term care for severely disabled veterans can be as high as $400,000 annually, whereas the average cost in its caregiver program is under $30,000 a year. It's clear that expanding VA's comprehensive caregiver program to veterans of all eras is not only the right thing to do for those who served, it is also a financially smart decision for American taxpayers. Over the past couple of weeks, we have seen and heard some very misleading arguments against the VA Mission Act. Let me assure you, as my VSO colleagues will also discuss, we would not be supporting this legislation if we were not convinced that it would expand access to medical care for enrolled veterans and strengthen the VA healthcare system that we all support so strongly. So today, we are calling on all senators to stand with America's veterans and their family caregivers by voting for the VA Mission Act. The men and women who served are counting on your support. Thank you. And now, American Legion, Lou Shelley.
Good morning. As Gary mentioned, my name is Louis Celli. I'm the Executive Director of the Washington, D.C. office for the American Legion. First off, I want to take this opportunity to thank Chairman Isakson, Ranking Member Tester, also Leader McConnell. There are a lot of offices to thank. This piece of legislation really has been years in the making. All the different components that went into this are pieces of legislation that our VSOs collectively have worked on for a great number of years. This is quite an accomplishment. We're very proud of it, and that's why 38 VSOs signed on to the letter to support this legislation. So the first thing is that right now there are 7 different programs that the VA operates in order to administer community care. That's 7 different points of entry, 7 different payment types, 7 different eligibilities, 7 different ways that the doctors can get paid, and it's confusing to veterans, it's confusing to providers, and it's confusing to the VA. They're all frustrated. Congress built all of these different programs to serve veterans in different capacities, and now it's time for Congress to fix that and put it all under one umbrella so that there's one single point of entry, there's one way for providers to bill the VA, there's one eligibility standard for veterans so that they can get the care that they need. The Senate needs to pass this legislation this week, and the American Legion calls on the Senate to do just that. Thank you. I'll be followed by Carlos Fuentes of VFW. There you go.
Thank you. Good job. On behalf of the men and women of the VFW, we are proud to join the Veterans and Military Organization colleagues standing with us today in strong support of the VA Mission Act. It's been a long road, and we have arrived to a carefully negotiated bipartisan deal with the fingerprints of veterans who rely on the VA healthcare system all over it. We thank Chairman Isakson, Chairman Rowe, Ranking Member Tester, Senator Heller and Senator Blumenthal, who join us here today, and all the members of both committees for their leadership and hard work on this important bill. We truly appreciate the inclusion of veterans organizations from the very beginning. The VA Mission Act has the best interest of veterans at its core. While the bill fixes the choice program, it also includes more than $10 billion worth of improvements to how VA doctors provide health care. This includes increases in loan repayment amounts, authority to practice telemedicine across state lines, better recruitment and retention authorities to address VA's workforce vacancies. Overall, it strikes a balance between improving VA capacity and relying on the private sector when needed, because VA can't be everything to everyone. But VA must remain the coordinator of care and guarantor of that care for veterans. This bill does that. For years, the VFW has also urged Congress to improve the way VA builds and maintains its aging infrastructure. VA spends $25 million to keep the lights on vacant and underused facilities a year. The average VA medical facility is more than 50 years old. We are glad that this bill would build on that and improve VA's capacity to provide care to veterans. It includes a number of provisions to improve construction processes. Critics who fear change say that asset and infrastructure review included in this bill is similar to BRAC. Calling AIR a VA BRAC is misleading and shows that opponents have failed to read the bill. Under BRAC, DOD moves its assets, including service members, and their families. VA can't force veterans to move. AIR is focused on realigning its VA's facilities to where veterans live. It requires VA and the Commission to incorporate the needs and preferences of impacted veterans, and 3 legitimate veterans organizations will be on the Commission to make sure it happens. Veterans want to improve, not dismantle, their healthcare system. The VA Mission Act would make certain VA is positioned to provide veterans the high quality and veteran-centric care they have earned and deserve. the VFW calls on all senators to vote yes on this important bill. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I think we'll turn it now to.
Mr. Blumenthal, Senator Blumenthal.
I want to thank Chairman Isakson, Ranking Member Tester for their extraordinary leadership, as well as leaders on the House side. But most important, I want to thank the representatives of our veterans who have given them a face and a voice and have made such an extraordinary contribution to this act. The beginnings, of course, date from years ago because a lot of this work has been cumulative, and I was very privileged to serve as ranking member under Senator Isakson for part of that period. But essentially, this measure brings VA healthcare into the 21st century. It consolidates programs, but it also elevates and enhances their quality. It assures first-class, world-class care to every veteran, or at least establishes that goal and assures greater accountability. And it isn't a matter of convenience or luxury. It's a matter of right for every veteran to receive that kind of health care. So thank you to everyone here. Thank you for your extraordinary leadership for our veterans.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, Dean. All of you. And do we have any questions?
Senator Tester, I was wondering, you brought up the specter of privatization in the remarks earlier. You know, a lot of this bill is going to come down to the implementation and writing the rules for that. What's your concern level right now with this administration and with the announcement of Secretary Wilkie as the nominee?
First of all, I think Wilkie is a strong choice. We haven't interviewed him yet. We will go through the process, but I think he's a strong choice. Somebody that Johnny and I both work with, people at the Veterans Affairs Committee work with, in his role as acting member. As far as the privatization versus building capacity, this bill does both. So what it does is it very much, look, the choice program has been a wreck. Okay, every veteran up here will tell you that. What Johnny and I have done, along with other members on the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee in the House, is we've simplified it, cut the red tape, made the veteran the center of the decision making, and that's the way it's going to be, and that's the way it should be. The choice program is implemented quickly. It's had a lot of hiccups. It's time to move on to another program that's simpler for the veterans to use. And then as far as capacity, this bill builds capacity within the VA. It was talked about by one of the Service Veterans Organization. It loan repayments, retention bonuses, scribes so doctors don't have to spend their life filling out paperwork. There's a lot of stuff in here that's going to help with recruitment and retention and build capacity within the VA, and that's really important too. So I think this is a good mix, this bill is.
Next question? Yes, ma'am.
After we interview him, talk about him. Right now, I certainly don't have anything that would cause me not to support him. He's a solid guy, but we're going to put him through the process, just like we do anybody who would be nominated for this position.
For all of your information, John and I have talked. I intend to move to have a committee meeting when we come back from the Memorial Day break as soon as I can. We will do our due diligence as we always do, and as soon as we can finish that, then hopefully we'll have a recommendation to the full Senate, and hopefully that can be acted on quickly.
So, and Johnny's exactly right. And so as that process unfolds, we will determine whether he's a confirmable person, but at this moment in time, I like him.
Have you spoken with the president about Wilkie
No.
at all? Okay. Sorry. Back.
So right now, maybe 30, 35, more than a third of veterans taken care of through the VA system are in the community. Do you have some sort of estimate of how that will shift upwards when this bill is implemented? And as Leo was saying, it does seem like the rubber meets the road is how these regs are written, because when I talk to various sort of stakeholders in this, they say different things. You know, some people say, oh, the doctor at VA is still going to work with the veteran and have the ultimate say over whether the veteran stays inside VA. But then when I talk to other stakeholders, they say, oh no, this is full choice once these rules are.
No. Johnny, go ahead. You first, and then I'll go.
I think we'll be seamless on our answer. There's been a lot of misrepresentations and misassumptions and unfortunate perpetuation of bad ideas that are going on. And that's what happens anytime you have a break in leadership, and which we've had at the VA. But we're going to fix that pretty soon. I think that will go away. I'm going to do a colloquy on the floor during the debate on this bill with two members who've already asked to have some clarifications. And I hadn't had time to ask John because he just got off the plane, but you're included in that. To answer questions on things like the primary care doctor at the VA. Is the veteran really getting a choice? How are we doing this, that, and the other? You know, anytime you pass a new piece of legislation, you have uncharted waters, but it would be false for anybody in here to start looking for ways to assume this is a bad idea. What we're doing is a very good idea, and we've learned from a lot of mistakes that we made in the original choice bill. So I would urge everybody to listen to the colloquies that are done, the responses that John and I give, and then the actions of the committee of the VA as they take on this new piece of legislation. I think this gentleman's been waiting a long time on it.
Yes, Senators, both senators.
Don't forget me, man, I took care of it. I said, don't forget me, I took care of it. Go ahead.
Neither of you have a projected cost for the Commission Act.
It's been scored.
Yeah, it's been scored, but I can't remember.
Hanky, what's the cost?
55 billion.
55. 50 over 5?
55 billion, and okay, and I'm sorry if I didn't understand before, but is there a problem with Mrs. Wilkie, according to the U.S. Code, enacting Senator, and whether or not we can go forward with confirmation? What's the situation?
I could stand to be corrected, but as I understand it historically, there are both things have taken place. There have been acting directors who stayed in as acting while they were confirmed, and there have been people who were asked to leave until they were confirmed. I do not know what position the White House has taken, nor the Attorney General's office. And I think we'll be getting an answer on that probably in the next few days, but it's been done both ways historically.
And we've been playing a little phone tag, but if need be, I think he's willing to step down, depending on the conference.
That's not going to be a problem.
No.
If I could just one bottom line question about the care. You're a vet. I think you've got a doctor that can adequately, or better than the VA, care for your needs. Can the veteran go to the VA and say, listen, I got a guy, you have to pick it or not?
Doctor will have to be qualified, using that word as a definition, but it's going to be the veteran's choice. The unqualification decision would be based on not opinion, but knowledge, fact, or rating.
They would still have to register with the VA as an authorized provider of care.
Yeah. Gary Augustine, in the best interest of the veteran.
Right. This whole act is written in the best interest of the
And-
veteran. That's what we kept as our byline, guideline on this.
And it's important to note that, and these guys back here will back me up on this, when I go out and talk to veterans, they like VA healthcare. With few exceptions, these guys like VA healthcare. They want the VA to be capacity built within the VA. And this bill does that. And if the VA can't provide the healthcare, then absolutely they go out. If they've got a doctor in their hometown that's just the best thing since sliced bread, if the VA approves it, they can go.
I can tell you that this legislation went through several different iterations, at least 20. And one of the driving factors that the American Legion needed to see was that VA is the gatekeeper.
Yep.
So that VA makes sure that all decisions that are made in the best interest of the veteran.
Senator, probably particularly for Senator Tester and Senator Keller, I remember being in Ely at one point and hearing from veterans who had to drive to Salt Lake City from up there, or Reno. So what does this do make it easier for them to get care? And then also, how often does this come up in sort of as a political issue when you guys are out at campaign events? How often
jobs of taking care of our veterans with us today. And, no, so that'll be discussed all day Monday, the number of veterans coming out. But this isn't a one-day event, this is 365 days. And regardless of where I am, if I'm in Ely, Elko, anywhere else in the state of Nevada, last year, you veterans came up to me. I was in a parade, on Sports State Parade from Hospital, and I expect to be more hospital is. But I will tell you that probably 9 out of 10 comments that were yelled at me from, because it was a armed forces day parade, were from veterans, and pushing to make sure that their benefits are there, and their health care is taken care of. So take it from there and assessing that along.
One more question.
Since I held the microphone, put that down for me, too. Substitute New Haven for what's in that town.
How many parades will you be going to on Monday, Senator Blumenthal?
I've got 11, depending on the weather, I will make all of them. For the whole weekend, 3 days.
One more question, please.
Can you address the concern the House minority raised about how this bill interacts with the mandatory spending caps?
Yeah. Johnny, if you want, I will just tell you this. And this is not a cop-out on this question at all. Taking care of our veterans is a cost of war. I don't care how they're paid for, it just needs to be paid for. There's nobody up here that wants to shortchange any other program on behalf of veterans. We've got to find the money, and we've got to do it, and we've got to do it right. I believe that Shelby and Leahy are going to have a little colloquy on the floor also on this very issue to make sure that the appropriations chair and ranking member understand this totally. But I'm going to tell you, we can work through this. This is a lot easier to work through than getting this bill to prime time, I'll tell you that. So look, I value the input given on the House minority, but the truth is that this is a minor issue.
Just to back up, John, we had a long conversation with Richard Shelby 2 days ago. We've shared a little colloquy information we're going to do regarding cost. But think about this, since the first shutdown threat was made in the 1970s to shut the government down, it's been the government except for the Veterans Administration. We've always forward funded it for a couple of years in many cases to make sure it didn't get caught up in a shutdown. Nobody up here wants to be in the business of shutting down a service for a veteran who earned that service through defending our country and our right to be free. That doesn't mean that we're not concerned about costs, but it means we're going to be as efficient as we can in providing the benefits, but they're going to be provided. They're going to be the highest quality and the best that we can see to it is. Thank you for coming today. God bless our veterans and God bless our country.
Thank you, John.